Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for being here.
Senator.
And thank you very much for your military service. My single biggest concern, Senator, about the nomination is the dramatic flip-flops between your past statements and record and what you're saying as a nominee. And they're about key core issues, and we've discussed some of those today. So I wanted to focus on that, and I apologize if I go over some of the things that have come up before. I couldn't be here for most of the hearing. In 2006, when Israel was responding to attacks by Hezbollah from Lebanon, you called that response a, quote, sickening slaughter, close quote, and you accused Israel of, quote, the systematic destruction of an American friend, the country and people of Lebanon, close quote. What do you say about those quotes today?
Well, first I said them. I've been asked about them. I have said I regret saying that. It was in the larger context of a speech I made about what was going on, the 30-some days of war going on. I also included in that speech the responsibility of Hezbollah, who started the war. So it wasn't exactly the way you just noted it. The language is exact, what you just said, but it was a larger context. Yes, I regret that language, but I think the bigger point is, Senator, and I have noted this all morning, my unequivocal support of Israel over the years. There's been no flip-flop on that. How I've voted, I've never voted against anything but Israel's interests. In every vote I cast in the United States Senate, I've said it in my book, they're a special historic ally. We will always support them and defend them. I've said it in my speeches. There's no flip-flop on my support of Israel.
Is there a flip-flop on your calling the response to Hezbollah, quote, the systematic destruction of an American friend, the country and people of Lebanon, close quote? I mean, do you stand by that today?
I just said that, and I said that I regretted saying that, but that's
so
not.
Do you stand by those words, or is that a flip-flop?
No, if I had a chance to edit those words out, I would. I just
That's
said
what
I
I'm talking
regret it.
about in terms of flip-flop.
Well, I suppose if I had a chance to edit a lot of things in my life, Senator, I'd probably be fairly busy.
Right.
But
let me move on, because I have a number of these concerns. In 1998, in a Senate hearing, you said that Secretary of State Madeleine Albright had, quote, tilted way too far toward Israel in the Middle East peace process, close quote. Do you still think that of that peace process in 1998?
I don't recall the event. I don't recall the words. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know the context. You know, again, Senator, I go back for years and years and years on different things I've said, but I don't recall that or what the context was, so I don't know.
Okay.
Secretary Albright has endorsed me, by the way, to be the next Secretary of Defense. I work very closely with Secretary Albright, as I did with President Clinton and his administration in support of Israel.
In general, at that time, under the Clinton administration, do you think that they were going, quote, way too far toward Israel in the Middle East peace process, close quote?
No, I don't, because I was very supportive of what the President did at the end of his term in December 2000, January 2001. As a matter of fact, I recount that episode in my book when I was in Israel.
Just to clarify, that's the sort of flip-flop I'm talking about, because that's what you said then, and you're changing your mind now. But
Senator, that's not a flip-flop. I don't recall everything I've said in the last 20 years or 25 years. If I could go back and change some of it, I would, but that still doesn't discount the support that I've always given Israel and continue to give Israel.
Okay, let me go to a third thing, is actually what you said today, talking about Iran as a, quote, legitimate elected government, close quote. Do you think the election that had to do with this Iranian government coming to power was free and fair and legitimate?
I noted that the term legitimate was not the term I should have used. I should have used recognized. That's the more appropriate term, and I was referring to the fact that it's a nation that is a member of the United Nations. It has embassies from all our allies. It is a recognized nation.
What about the word elected? Because you said legitimate elected government.
Well, there was an election in Iran.
So my question specifically was, you apparently think that was a free and fair and legitimate election?
That's not what I said. I said
well, I'm asking what you meant, because you said legitimate elected government.
I just explained I should have said recognized instead of legitimate, which I did earlier today. There was an election. There will be another presidential election in June of this year for President of Iran. Whether it's free and fair, I don't know.
And legitimate?
I don't know.
Okay. You have no expectations one way or the other about that?
Well, I do know that Iran is not exactly a model democracy, and it has not been. So I don't have any expectations for a free, fair election.
Okay. In 2008, you wrote that a nuclear Iran might be tolerable because, quote, sovereign nation states possessing nuclear weapons capability, as opposed to stateless terrorist groups, will often respond with some degree of responsible or at least sane behavior, close quote. Is that still your hope or expectation about this government of Iran?
Again, I'm not sure where the reference came from or the context, but what I obviously was referring to were different options that people will look at in regard to Iran getting nuclear weapons. I've always said that Iran must not get weapons of mass destruction. I've always said it's a sponsor of terrorism, and I've always said the military option should remain on the table to assure that Iran does not get nuclear weapons.
Well, again, this quote, you suggest that Iran would maybe or hopefully respond in a responsible or at least sane way. Those were the words. Is that still your expectation or hope?
Well, I always have hope that people respond in a sane way, but that doesn't at all change the facts that it is a dangerous, dangerous country that's a threat to the United States, Israel, and the entire world.
Okay. After your nomination, the Iranian government press noted with satisfaction that the, quote, anti-Israel, close quote, Hagel, obviously that's not your quote, that's theirs, is known for, quote, his criticism of Washington's anti-Iran policies, close quote, and that he, quote, has consistently opposed any plan to launch a military strike against Iran, close quote. Why do you think they have that impression?
Well, first of all, it's not an accurate quote. I've never opposed military action against Iran.
Let me just clarify. It's an accurate quote of the Iranian government press. Why do you think they have that impression?
It's not an accurate statement about my position.
Right. But why do you think they have that impression?
As I said in answer to that question earlier, I have enough difficulty understanding American politics, Senator. I surely don't understand Iranian politics.
Okay, thank you.
But if I might add, I also said that there have been some rather significant Israeli government leaders recently that have said some pretty nice things about me, current Israeli leaders.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.